Charleston, South Carolina is so rich with African American history, yet many don't know about these contributions?
Why is education so important, yet people fail to realize its significant role?
Do you know the true history of Charleston? Who really made a difference? To fight for desegregation in schools, hospitals, and restaurants takes major effort. Who was able to do it? William Sanders, also known as Bill Sanders. Some tried to make a change, but couldn't get through. Sanders was a messenger who had a breakthrough and changed the city we know today. Joining the Army as a young boy and serving with Dr. Martin Luther King, Sanders' life was considered bittersweet.
My name is William Sanders. I was born in New York, but I was sent to Johns Island when I was 18 months old. Our language is called Gullah, and to say something in Gullah, is that we used to work from kin to cant. We work from the time you can see in the morning till you can't see at night. And when you got through with that, you were tired. So nobody got into trouble. We started COBRA right after the hospital strike in 1969. We wanted to come up with an agency to be able to find problems in the community before it began to polarize people. Ms. Moutry came to me and said that 5 black nurses had got fired, and they fired them because they refused to follow order of a head nurse that wanted them to come in. They came into work. They wanted them to just go on and start working. And the law is that anytime a nurse going on duty, they got to get all the vitals and stuff on the patient, and the charts and what went on, so they can know what they're working with. So they wouldn't do it, and they fired them. So we were able to get those 5 nurses reinstated. But after we did that, we realized that there were so many people at the hospital that didn't have the nerve that those 5 nurses had. So that's when we started to organize the hospital workers. We never wanted a union. We wanted a hospital workers association, and they forced the strike because they thought that if they forced the strike, they could get rid of the 10 people like Ms. Moutry and them, and then the other folk would come back to work. They made a mistake with that. Charleston lost a lot of money because when it happened was in April to July, the height of the tourist season. All of the hotels and restaurants and everything were closed up. Charleston was closed down for 100 days. And education, you can educate yourself if you're disciplined enough, because everything is available to you. If you can just read and write, the stuff is available. And that's back in the day, that's how most of the folk got educated. They did it with reading and being around folk and stuff and studying stuff. But you got to be disciplined. You got to do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it.
Lila Campbell was born here in Charleston, South Carolina. She was born at the time of segregation. Her and her family lived on 54 Market Street in downtown Charleston, which was very hard for her and her family when Market Street was all white, except for them. By the time Lila was a teenager, she attended Avery. Her father was the principal of Avery. Avery was the first African-American school here in Charleston, South Carolina. Lila went to all senior schools her entire life. After developing a lot of knowledge, she became an oral historian taken after her father. Segregation was a hard time for African Americans, but it wasn't a time to cry another way. It was a time to fight and stay to the racial hate crimes and the judgments of non-believers.
My name is Leela Potts Campbell, and I was born here in Charleston, South Carolina. Growing up here in Charleston was a rather interesting experience as I look back and also remember my experiences, and that is that Montague Street was all white except for us. My father was principal of the Avery School, and along with that came this home that we lived on 54 Montague Street, which we purchased before we left here and knew we were going to leave here. And nobody ever spoke to us when we were out. When we came out, they went in. It was one of the first schools for blacks in all of the United States. And in the early days, all of the teachers were white because they had to come from up north. And the school had to house them. So they all lived in a teacherage, which is right next door. My father was a historian. I was always wanted to know why. And so I guess I've done maybe about 60 or 70 interviews here in Charleston. I know to go back and tell you, well, the why. So how is it that I know? Because that's what I have to ask when I'm interviewing. You always want to know why. Well, how come? And then that's when you find out about the person's parents and how they think about things. What have been their experiences? What is their motivation? What made them want to do that in the first place? And that's important. That's very important in understanding why.
During the 1960s, Charleston was a different place than we know today. Separation was unknown. But was it equal? Was it right? A young lady by the name of Dr. Millicent Brown, who was born here in Charleston, South Carolina, believed that she can be a part of change. Her parents always told her that the society she lived in was cruel and unfair. At the age of 15 and in the 10th grade, this young lady made a remark of being the first black student to enter a white public high school in Charleston, South Carolina. With the help of her peers, parents, and faith leaders, she didn't let her community down. Her role helped start the integration of schools in Charleston, South Carolina. Dr. Millicent Brown, a modest lady, quick to say that it was a fulfilling duty that I carried the torch of being the first black student at Rivers High School in Charleston, South Carolina. I'll always remember that it was not about me, but about the future.
My name is Millicent Brown. I am a history professor at Claflin University, which is in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I am a native of Charleston, South Carolina. In 1963, I was a part of a group of 11 students who were the first black students to attend all-white schools in Charleston. I attended Rivers High School. I went into the 10th grade and I was 15 years old at the time. It wasn't my steps. It was really the steps of my parents and lots of other adults who for a very long time had been trying to get rid of segregated schools. And so for many, many, many years, people had been arguing that this was wrong. You should not segregate people by race. So when the Supreme Court in 1954 ruled that once and for all there should be no separate schools in the United States, my parents started trying to get my sister to be able to leave the all-black school and attend the school that had been all-white. And they did not respond. It didn't work well. They just ignored us for years. My sister graduated from high school and we thought, oh gosh, now what are we going to do? Well, my father and mother switched my name on the suit, and then the case stayed in my name for a while. And so it was over 9 years before Charleston actually paid attention to the Supreme Court decision of 1954. It was worse at the beginning. From the very first day, you know, people called me some ugly names, but sometimes it wasn't the words that they used. Sometimes it had to do more with not wanting to talk to me at all. When I went to school and I encountered people who were not always kind or friendly, I always knew I could go back home to my community. The impact of being one of the first to go into the schools is that after the first came the second, after the second came the third. If somebody doesn't step up and demand that things change, things will never change. I think somebody had to be first, and I just happened to be that person.